Yes, the Remarque Peace Center was founded in 1998, and it is run by the city and the University of Osnabrück, which is a town in the northwest of Germany. And as the name says, it is dedicated to the work and the heritage of the famous German author Erich Remarque, who is the author of All Quiet on the Western Front, for example. We have a permanent exhibition on the life and work of Remarque, and in the exhibition sector we have also 6 exhibitions each year which deal with the question of representation of war in the media in general, not only in literature but in general. Because of the global popularity of Remarque, we have visitors from all over the world. It's about 30,000 each year, and a lot of them are also visiting the archive. We have the worldwide leading archive related to Remarque, and if anybody around the world is dealing with Remarque, he will contact us because we have the expertise to do that. But we are also committed to peace work on a local level in the town of Osnabrück and the region around it, but nationwide and on a global level. And perhaps that's the reason why I'm here at the Jeju Forum. Now, Erich Remarque was always in all of his novels, not only in All Quiet on the Western Front, he was interested in describing the fate of individuals. And he was convinced that the reader should not only read the novel, but think about it. Think about it in the sense that he was to put the individual fate that he is reading about, put into his own life. So how would I have reacted in this situation? And this is also the case in All Quiet on the Western Front. So on the one hand side, the death of Paul Bäumer is a symbol of the senselessness of killing in war in general. But on the other hand, throughout the novel, the author Remarque is always posing the question to the reader, what would you do in this situation? And this is the reason why this novel is so attractive, because everybody can find him or herself in this novel and think about what has this fate to do with my life. And I think this worked very well throughout the novels, and because this is the reason why Remarque is so, and still today is so internationally well regarded and it is read. You know, his novels, All Quiet on the Western Front, now is 90 years old, 90 years, and it deals with a war which ended 100 years ago. But still today readers can find themselves in the novel and think about what has this to do with my actual situation in conflict and so on. Because Remarque addressed the individual and the fate of the individual, and he always asked his readers to think about the situation. It can be observed throughout the international reception of Remarque's novels that it doesn't depend on the character of warfare and conflict, whether people can find themselves in the novels. But because Remarque is always describing human relationships which are not directly related to historic events, but they are related to general human questions. So what is my responsibility in a conflict? How am I responsible, how am I myself be responsible for the conflict, for the outcome of the conflict, for the consequences of the conflict? What can I, as an individual, do against war and to diminish the risk of conflict? And because Remarque's message is anti-totalitarian and his message is anti-war, of course, and he is always directing the reader to find some empathy for the so-called enemy. And so it doesn't depend on the war, but it depends on the conflict, and to see the other person and to realize that the other person is part of myself in a way. This is a really complicated question because, of course, it has, from the German perspective, it has to do with two lost world wars. So both wars were started from Germany and Germany lost it. And so Germany today is still committed to the consequences and the heritage of these wars, especially the Second World War with the Holocaust and all the crimes against the civilians throughout Europe and beyond. And so the whole commemoration culture in Germany is dependent on the heritage of the Second World War. And this has consequences for actual and contemporary German politics too. So that's, for example, the reason why German soldiers are not directly engaged in warfare in Afghanistan, Iraq, or wherever. They are only supporting, in a supporting role and in a humanitarian role. But that we are not taking part in those wars like France or Great Britain or especially the United States has its reasons in the heritage of the Second World War. And that's the way the Germans are regarding their history, the German history, and their responsibility for the two world wars and for the millions of deaths in these two world wars. Again, a very complicated question, and it's really risky to answer them in about 2 minutes or so. But now the German people and the individuals who were contemporaries of the Second World War, and even my generation, which was born in the 1960s, are deeply committed and engaged into the responsibility and the consequences of the Second World War. So we were educated in the belief and in the thoughts of that we have to make to make new friendships with the other countries in Europe, and that we have to establish new relationships and to prove to the world that the Germans are peaceful people. And this was the main task, whatever. Throughout the 1950s, 60s, 70s, and I think up until today. So now the generation of the Second World War, who has directly experienced the Second World War, and they are directly ancestors, are dying out. So we have a biographical problem with it. So there are nearly no longer any survivors of the concentration camps, for example, because they are nearly all already died. And now we have a real problem to demonstrate to the younger generations how to deal with these consequences of the Second World War. And so at the moment in Europe we have a huge discussion about the sense of the European Union, for example. And the generations like me and before were convinced that the European Union is a model of peace finding and peacekeeping, for example, and that the European Union is a guarantee that there will be no World War III in Europe or something like that. But as you can see by the elections last weekend for the European Union Parliament, and you have these right-wing parties as the major parties, for example, in France and Italy, you can see that there is really a problem. And it's the role of Germany to establish a new basis for the relevance of the European Union. That's their commitment. Yes. So, yes, we are already doing. We are disseminating it. So, of course, we have this exhibition and commemoration part of our work, but we are working on different levels. We have a lot of programs for schools and universities, for students, pupils, scholars, and so on, who can come to us, and we are taking the Remarque and his work as the starting point to discuss problems. For example, the role of the media in warfare. And but the basic to deal with this subject is to deliver something like media competence to the scholars and the school people and the students and so on. And this is what we are doing. So, for example, we are taking the world famous film After All Quiet on the Western Front, which is from 1930, and we are teaching students how to read a movie and trying to give some hints on propaganda, for example. So we have a past product like the movie of 1930, but we have actual and contemporary problems in trying to answer to these problems. And this is the local level, and on the global and national level we are trying to establish cooperations, and we have a lot of cooperations with international institutions in the scientific world, in the researcher world, but also in schools and so on. And we are trying to, on the basis of Remarque, we are trying to disseminate the thoughts of peace and humanity. Now, the funding is done by the city of Osnabrück and the University of Osnabrück, and we also get money from third parties. It depends on the projects we are doing. And because we are doing exhibitions and we have traveling exhibitions, we are always looking for cooperation partners to finance these projects. But because the city of Osnabrück is convinced to be a peace city, and there are several pillars of this belief being a peace city, and one of the pillars is Remarque. So it's the city of Osnabrück is committed to finance the Peace Center, because, as to say, I'm something like an ambassador of the city of Osnabrück, being here, for example, to the Jeju Forum, or to discuss with you from the Jeju Peace Institute, and so on. And so this is one of our tasks, to deliver the thought of peace in the Osnabrück version, so to say, to other countries and to establish contacts. And so that's why we, yes, of course, like every institution, we have some problems generating financing and sponsoring and so on, but also we are on a stable financial basis. Yes, we are already have established a lot of cooperations, and we are very committed in working together with schools and universities. And I think that this work will also be the future of the Remarque Peace Center. And especially when you regard the current situation in Europe, what I already was trying to demonstrate to you is that we are now, I think in Europe we are in a period of increasing nationalism, of increasing right-wing politics, of increasing what is called fake news and so on. And I think not only the Remarque Peace Center, but the international peace institutions are called up, so to say, to do something against it, to do something against this nationalism, this worldwide xenophobia, this worldwide attempt of not trying to understand the other. And so the peace museums have to develop a program, and for example a joint program to do something against this swift in international thinking.